In the darkest shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read ancient tomes. The order of the Abercast. We are the brave and bold.
The Ages begins with the shocking story of Cain and Abel and the journey of violence and revenge spanning thousands of years, following Cain through his cursed life from an ancient invasion of malicious angels to the American Revolutionary War. A masterful, compelling journey through time, The Ages delves deep into arcane knowledge, myth, and legend. The art is stunning, and the story takes you on a journey where mortals, immortals, angels, and demons are all forced to deal with the folly that is God's creation. It's a beautifully dark and gritty ride through history. This 4-part story follows the astrological procession of the ages and how each 2,500-year age parallels major changes in the development of Earth's inhabitants. Cain's blasphemous struggle with the divine and sacred tyrant God will create and crumble empires, shape history, and cause a cosmic cataclysm.
Yeah, there's a right down the road from me, there was one of these places like Trans-Allegheny. It was called Dixmont, and it was like this huge asylum complex. It had like 33 buildings, and it had like underground service tunnels linking all the buildings, and it had its own graveyard up there, and it was a super fucking creepy place. You know, like all these places, they got closed down like in the 80s because, you know, there was too many people and not enough money, and the inmates were like medicating themselves, like they were medicating themselves because there was like no staff to do it and stuff. And when they closed, they just opened the door and let these people just wander out. Like there's still like homeless people in town who used to live at Dixmont, you know. But recently, like a few years ago, Walmart bought it out and destroyed all the buildings. And they're trying to put a Walmart up there, and whenever they start building, there's like an avalanche, and it like closes off part of the highway. Like it's just the ground's crumbling out from underneath it. And I always think like that's the ghost of those old poor fucking bastards that don't want to get chopped on top of for the rest of eternity, you know.
Well, I tell you, those asylums we've done, maybe 8 or 9 of them on the show so far, and it's a lot of the same stories, same build, just like you said there, with all these buildings, underground tunnels, and all of them are just horribly haunted because back then, of course, they didn't know how to treat the people, and then you think they kicked all these people out, and then they died, just buried them there, and yeah, I wouldn't ever want to put anything on top of that kind of land. Not to mention with all those underground tunnels, did they make sure that they shored up everything?
Well, for Dixmont they did, because we used to go, like I've been up there a couple times, like you go to, like, if you knew where the caretaker's house was, like they'll let you sign a waiver or whatever, and they let you go up there until like the sun goes down. So you can like kick around like the old, you know, as long as you know, hey, if I fall into a pile of broken glass, you know, it's my fault, like those kind of waivers.
Sure.
So, but we found stairs that go down to those service tunnels, and it's like there's like a section of it that was still open, and it was so weird, man. They had like old wheelchairs and medical records and like filing cabinets and stuff down there, and you're just like, oh my god, it's like a fucking Marilyn Manson video down here.
I know, because those old wheelchairs are creepy.
Yeah,
Yes, they are very creepy.
But like you start down one of the service tunnels and it's all walled off, so it's like at least that, you know, at least that part of it, you know, was I guess safe and sound, I guess, so people couldn't like wander through there or whatever. But yeah, like, you know, when we went up there, it's like they took all the doorknobs off the doors. They left the doors but took all the doorknobs off. so it couldn't accidentally lock, I guess, is what it was. But like you're walking through there and like the glass windows are all broken out. So when a breeze comes through, you just hear doors closing like behind you. And you're just like, what the fuck is going on? Put the doorknobs back on, man. But yeah, there was a lot of weird stuff. And like you go like to the middle, like where the two wings were, like you go to the middle and you start going up the stairs and there was a huge fire there apparently at some point in time. I never heard about that, but they never fixed it. It was just this knocked out wall, and like you're just standing outside all of a sudden. Like it was so surreal and crazy, and like you look at these tiny rooms these people were in, you're just like, it's fucking just awful, miserable experience for those poor people.
Yeah, so you just know the energy that was built up there was just not good.
Yeah, and it's like we were going to leave the one time, and the guy was like, "Hey, did you guys go into the morgue?" And we're like, "No, we didn't see a morgue." And they're like, "It's in that building over there. The door's locked, but the window's broke in the back if you want to climb back there." And I'm like, of course I fucking want to climb back there. So it's like we're climbing back there, and like they have like the like the refrigerator drawers, like where they put the dead people. Were like they were still there, like totally intact. Like you could pull the things out, and they had like the where they put the people to embalm them, like the big ceramic like bathtub looking table thing. And I told my girlfriend, I'm like, you gotta climb up on there. She's like, fuck no. Yeah. But yeah, it's just so wild. Like it's just so wild. It's like a just like a glimpse like into this awful past, and it wasn't so long ago. It's just
I know
crazy.
when we talk about it, you think you're talking about, oh yeah, way back then, and then you realize a lot of these places didn't close down until the 90s. And then I remember when they closed them down, like you said, they just closed the door and said, "Bye, you're on the street," because there was nowhere else to put them.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like you're telling these stories, and you're like, and then Dr. Frankenstein walked in with an electrode, and you're like, no, like this was like these people still are alive, like that did this stuff,
Exactly.
Like I want to meet the hospital administrator that's like, yeah, just let them pick their own pills out. There can't be any negative repercussions from doing something like that. All right, let's. I think I'm ready here. So, on the phone today we have Diane and Denise from History Goes Bump. It's a podcast. It's really awesome that the way they have it. It's like a little bit of, this day in history, and they throw some creepy stuff down, and they do like they call it haunted. What do you guys call it? the ghost tours for the mind. That's what it is.
That's
So, your episode on the Battle of Somme was really cool. I really enjoyed that, and I just want to throw that out there. Thank you guys for coming in, or calling in, I should say. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having us, John. We're very excited to talk to you.
yes, absolutely.
Okay. So how long has the podcast been going on?
Well, we launched it in October of 2014, so we're a little bit over a year and a half old.
Okay, and how did you guys were you guys like weirdo kids? Like, how do you find yourself? how do you
well, Diane was a weirdo kid, and then I just met her and kind of got sucked into the weirdness.
Yeah, I was one of those kids. John, you probably were. How old are you?
Well, that's pretty impolite. No, I'm 42.
Oh, okay. So you're about my age.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Did you ever watch In Search of with Leonard Nimoy?
Yep. It scared the shit out of me. A lot of those are really, he did like an alien abduction one or something, like right when that phenomenon was coming out, I guess. And I remember it kept me up like for many, many nights thinking about those aliens.
Yeah, so I grew up watching that and Unsolved Mysteries. I had books that were on oddities and mysteries of the universe and that kind of stuff. So I've always loved weird, creepy things.
It's like those Time Life books. Is that
As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
yes. I still have my Mysteries of the Universe Time Life book.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could just waste a whole like rainy Saturday away just flipping through those books and just trying to wrap your head around some of the stuff that's in there. And that story is a lot like mine too. Like my granddad was in all that, and he had like the occult stuff and like the Nazi reemergence kind of encyclopedias. Like people really started paying more attention to that kind of stuff. So all that kind of stuff was available to me like when I was a kid. So yeah, I totally get it.
Well, and along your lines, I was totally into horror comics too.
Oh, well, there you go.
Now that one I was into. I used to love like scary books, Stephen King, John Saul, all of that. I had over 300 like horror books, and so that one I did jump into. But the oddities and stuff I got introduced to later.
Okay. What kind of horror comics are you talking about? Like the old like EC comics or?
Yeah, when they would have Tales from the Crypt, and I was definitely a DC girl, so I don't even remember what their titles would be, but I remember one of them was Old West horror stories and things like that. So yeah,
the Jonah Hex stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's cool. It's funny like how those things kind of like inform us, and it never goes away, sort of. You know, like along the lines of those books. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking of my library, and I think that I stole some of those books from my grandpa when he passed away. I think I have them up in my library right now. So do you guys do like? I know that you guys do the like extensive ghost tours and stuff. Do you do like hunting? Like I think I heard in an episode you were talking about doing an EMF session or something like that, and it kind of made me think that you guys might like go in for like ghost hunting or something like that, or is that stuff that you use on your tours?
So we've had the EMF readers on our tours, but we never ever tempt the spirits.
That's Denise's favorite thing to say is don't tempt the spirits.
Are there T-shirts? Are there History Goes Bump T-shirts with that?
No, but Diane did post one that's hashtag spirit tempter just to get under my goat.
So how would you use the EMF meter to tempt the spirits? Is it just like trying to communicate with them is what we're talking about?
Well, it's kind of when the people go in with them and they're like, are you here? Are you here? Make yourself known. Prove it. We don't believe in you kind of thing.
Well, here's the specifics. An EMF detector is a device that detects electrical charge in the air. So that to me isn't really tempting spirits if you're carrying something like that. But yeah, I mean, Denise feels like if you're going around with a recorder and asking questions, or, you know, if you're using a Ouija board or something like that. But yeah, the EMF detector, and the thing they're kind of hokey because in a lot of cities, your ghost tours are outside and your electrical lines usually run down the sidewalk.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of people will be like, oh, the EMF detector's going off, and you've just hit wherever an electrical box is underneath the sidewalk. So it's not really a ghost, you know?
Yeah. So you're like running into like not naturally occurring, but like man-made like electrical fields and stuff because you're wandering outside in the middle of a big city. So it's like you got to like go out to like a farm or something like that for those to kind of be. Well, then you got crappy wiring in some of those places. So
exactly. So that's why when you see, I'm sure you've watched some of the ghost shows that are on TV. They'll do a lot of debunking of stuff like that because that'll set things off.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, however, when we were at the Ripley's Auditorium up in St. Augustine the one time doing a ghost tour, and they like loan you their EMF readers, and we were in this auditorium little part, and she was just showing some slides and talking, and she'd set a flashlight over on the ledge, and when I was just looking at my EMF detector, and when I started pointing it that way, it started like going like crazy. So I was kind of like, is there something electrical here? And I kept moving it back and forth, and Diane was watching it too, because when I moved it away, it would start going, and when I brought it in closer, it would start to kind of calm down. And I was pointing it over towards the corner without even realizing it. The flashlight was over there, and as I was pointing it that way and we were watching that, the flashlight turned on.
Oh.
And nobody was there. So it was like, okay. So that one, who knows?
Yeah. So are you guys both believers? Diane, I thought I read on the website that you describe yourself as a healthy skeptic.
Yeah, I think we both define ourselves as open-minded skeptics. I do believe that there is something, but I don't know what that something is. So I have lots of ideas about what it could be. I've had enough experiences that I know there's something going on,
okay.
Whether it's a ghost or just some other weird occurrence. I don't know. I think it's good to approach things with that kind of, first of all, you want to be open-minded just in case something does happen, then you're open to having something happen. But I think it's good to be skeptical to begin with. You don't want to just assume that, oh, the door just opened on its own, so a ghost just opened it.
I mean,
it could be the house is unlevel or something,
Yeah.
Oh, it could be anything.
Now, are you guys fans of the TV shows that do the ghost huntings and stuff? Because it sounds like you just described a lot of them.
I do enjoy
Diane,
watching
did
them.
you hear that?
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
We enjoy
Sorry.
making fun of them too.
Okay.
So I will sit down and watch them. The problem is when you're watching shows like that, and from doing production and stuff, when you're sitting there for a long period of time, you've devoted hours and hours, and then you get nothing. And then you have the added pressure of an audience that you have to present this to.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's times where they might cook the books a little bit just because they got to have something, so... And it's always something that we can't see off screen. Did you see that? Did you hear that? Like, I didn't see anything. I don't hear anything. But,
Yeah, I saw that was the tagline on your Skype handle.
That's my way of kind of making fun of the Ghost Adventure guys and stuff.
Yeah.
So sometimes we're a little bit irreverent.
Yeah. Well, for sure. I mean, you kind of have to be, especially when you're watching productions or shows like that, because sometimes they take themselves a little too seriously, so you gotta kind of break your own tension, I guess, with it.
Well, and it's hard to believe something when you're not actually physically there. We'll get lots of pictures that are sent to us with what do you think this is? Well, unless I take the picture myself and I know exactly where I was standing, that I was using the camera, and that I haven't doctored something, it's really hard to believe that.
Yeah.
When it's something with, like Dan, our friend over at Ninth Story Studios, he and I were recording an episode one time, and you know about Victoria, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know all about her.
So we were talking about the history, basically the creepy history behind nursery rhymes.
Mm-hmm.
And we were almost done recording, and all of a sudden I heard a music box little sound effect in my ear, and I'm thinking, oh, Dan's over there playing with his little soundboard,
Right.
And all of a sudden he said, "Did you hear that?" And at first I was like, okay, he's playing with me. But then he said it again, and I could tell he was really serious. And then I was like, I did. It sounded like in a music box. And he goes, yeah. And then we kind of blew it off, and we talked a little bit more, and then it happened again. And since I trust Stan and he trusts me, we both knew we weren't playing.
Yeah.
And so it kind of creeped us out a little bit, because we're like, wow, was that Victoria? Just kind of, and we happened to be talking about Victoria at that moment too.
Yeah.
It was like, is she saying hi to us?
And the thing with that is, a listener just recently was it on the page on Facebook? She had posted that she was listening to that episode, and she heard the music box as well. So
yeah, that's crazy. Dan literally could fill a notebook with stories like this about Victoria. It's pretty creepy. I'll tell you, one time I got a security system put in my house, and I got like some external cameras, and I come down and I like go through the footage and stuff every once in a while, just so I could say that I didn't waste my money putting these cameras up. And one time I'm like zooming through the footage of like my side yard, and all of a sudden this amorphous kind of blob starts like working its way across my yard, and I start panicking. Like I'm having like a emotional reaction to this thing because I couldn't figure it out. Like I was like, there's the weird ghost blob, rolling around my side yard. So I run upstairs and I get my wife and I'm like, you got to come downstairs and look at this thing. And we're watching it and she's freaking out and I'm kind of freaking out. And then all of a sudden, like the camera, like, it does like it must have been raining or something, and it was just a bug like stuck to the lens of the camera. But for that like 2 minutes, I was like, "There's a freaking ghost out in my fucking backyard." It's crazy.
Well, and a lot of people catch bugs on their cameras, and those are a lot of the orb photos that people put out there, and it's a bug.
Yeah, it's just funny because it's like I think that I'm kind of like a rational kind of healthily skeptic kind of dude, but just for, like I said, just for that 2 minutes, I could have totally just been like off the rails. Like, I gotta call Pitt University. I gotta get some paranormal investigators down here. I gotta get like I'm in the movies or something. Like it was just wild. Like it's just a wild experience. You just gotta take a deep breath and really make sure you know what you're looking at, I guess, is the moral of that story.
Well, I think that kind of falls in line with being an open-minded skeptic, because it is easy to have your eyes play tricks on you, or if you're thinking about something, sometimes you might think you're seeing something out of the corner of your eye. So it's good to say, okay, let me calm down for a minute before I freak out. Yeah. Did this really happen? Am I really seeing this?
Yeah. So you guys do a lot of ghost tours. How many have you done if you had to guess?
Oh, wow. Ghost tours in our life. I started doing them when I was a kid with my parents. So I'd done a few before I met Denise, and that's how she kind of got roped into this. Is we'd go to different cities, and to me, the best way to get the history of a city is to do a ghost tour, because you get the seedy side of things too. Mm-hmm. They may not necessarily tell you about the brothels and creepy things and ghosts and murder and mayhem and all that stuff when you go on a standard history tour. And so I said, Denise, we got to do ghost tours because these are the best way to see a city. And so she got roped into them. I'd say since we've been together, I don't know.
Pretty much every vacation we go on, we do at least one.
I think we've probably done about 30 or 40.
Wow.
Probably, yeah.
And we've done them in all different kinds of cities.
Yeah. So what's the wildest thing that, like, have you ever experienced while you're doing one of the tours?
I would say probably the lamp in Plymouth. Yeah, so we got to do a tour in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and that one, it was a walking tour, but we got to go into two houses that were reportedly haunted. And so we were going through, and Diane had been filming a lot of things with her cell phone as we were going through the house, and we got into this one room, and she dropped her hand to the side, but not in a real comfortable position, just kind of straight down, because she was still trying to pseudo film the guide, but not really. She just had the phone pointed in that direction. Uh-huh. Well, while the guide was talking, she was telling the story about one of the ghosts, and then she said he was raising like the girl's ponytail, and so she said, I told her just ignore him. And right when she said that, the lamp that was over on the table turned on. Ooh. And so we were like, oh my gosh, what was that? And so immediately we asked, because we are open-minded skeptics, if anybody was standing next to a switch, like if they'd bumped a light switch on the wall and all of that. But Diane looked down at her hand, and her phone was pointing right at the lamp, and she goes, oh my gosh, I think I got it on video. And so later when we watched the video, that's the part that got weird, because where she had her hand, her phone moved until the lamp was centered right in the center of her phone before it turned on.
Wow.
And to give guys a visual of what she's talking about, it's as if I'm standing with the lamp to the left side of me. And so if you're holding your phone just in your palm straight ahead, I would have had to crank my left hand back in order to get this in the screen. So my hand had gone into that position without me being aware of it. It was almost as if whatever energy was turning that lamp on had pulled the energy from my phone. And so it had pulled my hand in that direction. I literally looked down and went, because I thought, well, I didn't get that on video because my phone is pointing towards the guide who's in front of me. And I went, oh my gosh, my phone is pointing right at that lamp. I think I got it. And I did.
And that's why it was so weird, because when you look at the video, and once you know, if you know the position of her hand, but when you watch the video, her phone is just moving, the frame is moving slowly, 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 and then it stops when the lamp is centered, and she's not looking at it, like trying to take the picture, and then that's when it turned on. So it was just kind of a weird occurrence. Like, what would make that happen?
If people didn't know us and they were watching the video, they would think I had set it up.
Yeah.
Because they'd be like, wow, she just happened to have that lamp right in the center right when it turned on.
What a coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was, where'd you say it was, Plymouth?
In Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Yeah. What's like your favorite town to do ghost tours in?
Without a doubt, St. Augustine, and that's down here in Florida. It's the oldest city in America, and it's got all kinds of great stories with it. You had war there, you had pirates there, yellow fever killed off a whole bunch of people. So it is just a fabulous city. You can almost feel the creepy history, ghosts, all that stuff. You could just feel it when you get into the city.
You have a haunted lighthouse there.
Yeah. And so, and probably every other place on the main drag is quote unquote haunted.
Okay.
Now, of course, as we know, there are a lot of places that nowadays it's almost become cool to be haunted.
Right.
And actually a selling point. So like every bed and breakfast out there all of a sudden is haunted. So St. Augustine is very much that way. All of their beds and breakfasts are haunted. Every other restaurant down the main drag is haunted. So, take it with a grain of salt. But it is just a really great city to go through. And we've had the experience, Denise mentioned that the lighthouse that's down there is really haunted. And both times that we've been down there for the ghost tour, we've had an experience where there's these little girls that are supposed to be ghosts there that were drowned in the ocean. Because what they would do is, in order for them to get the supplies up to the lighthouse, they would have to run this, it was like a cart up these train tracks in order to bring supplies up, because they were bringing up bricks and lots of heavy things. Well, the kids thought, hey, this looks like a fun ride. If you unlock the cart, it'll go down, and it had this little block at the end, so it would stop the cart before it would tip over into the ocean. Well, the one time it jumped that track there, and the kids went into the ocean, and it came down. The cart came down on them, and I believe there was 4 of them in there, and only one of them survived.
Oh my God, that's awful.
And so, yeah. And a couple of the girls now, quote unquote, supposedly haunt this lighthouse, and we were doing a tour there, and we had a group with us too. And there's a deadbolt that locks the door. And I was on
the lighthouse.
Yeah. And I was in the inside with another girl, and we were kind of looking at some of the museum displays that they had. And Denise had gone outside to ask one of the tour guides if she could climb back up the lighthouse because she's crazy. She wanted to see if she could go back up. And I could hear her pounding on the door, and like she was locked out. And I turned to the girl that was with us, and I said, well, that's crazy because the door's unlocked. Why don't they just come in? And they keep pounding. So finally I go over, and I'm looking at it, and it looks like there's this little thing hanging out of it, which was the old lock that doesn't work anymore. And I thought maybe it was broken. And we had a really big guy that was with us, too. So he came up behind me, and he's trying to open the door, and he can't get it open. Denise is on the other side trying to get it open. My dad came over, and he's a big guy, and he's trying to get it open. None of us can get it open. Well, here comes the tour guide, and he had to unlock the deadbolt with his key. And he said, I'm the only one who has the key, and you can't turn that deadbolt unless you have the key to do it, because there was no way to lock it from the inside.
That's crazy. That lighthouse wanted to keep Denise.
No, it wanted to keep Diane.
It was keeping me in and keeping her out. I told Denise it didn't want her to come back in.
Yeah, it's probably thought I was crazy too.
But it's just those things like, was it a ghost that turned the knob? I don't know, but it was really weird.
Yeah, man.
Especially since you needed a key and they needed a key to unlock it. And literally nobody was between me because I didn't leave the lighthouse that far. Everybody had differing opinions on how far up we could go. And so I said, well, I'll just go ask somebody. So I literally ran out. Somebody was right there. I asked them and turned around to come right back in. So it wasn't like I was gone for, a long time.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's creepy. You guys, do you have a lot of like stories like that? I mean, not that weird, but like when you go on these tours, is it common to have like little experiences, or is it common not to?
It's common not to.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a neighbor across the street, and we keep telling her she needs to come with us, and she's like, no, I don't want to go because I don't want to see any ghosts. We're like, well, number one, we've never seen a ghost on a tour. And number two, we're like, nothing really ever happens. But And we used to say this all the time, and we would tell people that all the time. And really, recently, it seems like every time we go, something starts happening. So we're like, is it because we're really delving into this deeply that we're starting to attract things? But generally speaking, you're just walking around doing a tour, and nothing happens, nothing shows up on pictures.
Well, and that's where we did get the idea with the podcast, because we love doing the haunted history tours. We like doing regular history tours as well, but we liked doing the haunted history tours, hearing the stories, hearing the proposed hauntings and all of that. And so we were like, that was an interest of ours. And Diane wanted to do another. She likes doing production and podcasts and things like that. So she wanted to do something. She goes, well, why don't we do it? And that's where the whole thing came to her to do ghost tours for the Theater of the Mind. So it's basically doing what we enjoy doing when we go on vacation by engaging in the ghost tours and going out on them, but doing that via a podcast. So listeners who might not get the opportunity to go on the ghost tours could kind of get a feel of what that's like and the stories and the history.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about the bed and breakfasts that are like they're haunted and stuff now. Do you think that that's marketing?
I think with some places it is. I'm sure there are quite a few beds and breakfasts that are haunted, but I think for the most part, a lot of it is marketing. I know that there's a particular place down in Louisiana, and I've heard it from two different people who do go and they actually write books about it, and they do their own investigations. And both of these people have said that there's this particular bed and breakfast in New Orleans that really pushes the fact that they're haunted.
Uh-huh.
And they'll even they have like these toys, and they'll tell you to put these blocks out, and this little child ghost will stack the blocks in a certain way.
Oh, man.
And they said nothing ever happens when people go, but they really promote it.
Yeah.
And so they said they think a little bit of that is marketing. Of course, there's some places that are, but...
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, what else you might have going on is before it was not kosher to be haunted, and you didn't want people to touch that with a 10-foot pole. So it could be, to coin a term, kind of that some of the places are coming out of the closet now that it's in vogue to be haunted. It's like, oh, all this weird stuff that's happened here, we don't have to hide it anymore. So now we can just advertise it. So it might be a little bit of both.
Yeah. I was listening to you did a bonus podcast where you guys were at some kind of convention, and there was a guy just talking about like haunted bed and breakfasts, and I was like, really, is this a thing? Do you recall that?
Yes.
And it is, especially as I mentioned in St. Augustine. I don't even know how many beds and breakfasts they have there, because the first thing is beds and breakfasts, especially now, are really getting popular. You've got the Airbnb, and I think a lot of people are trying to get away from the hotel thing and more of an individual kind of service, which is what a bed and breakfast is. And it just seems like you have a place like St. Augustine that may have, I don't know, 30, 40 beds and breakfasts there.
Wow.
And there's people who want to stay in that haunted room. And so it's just, it really is. They'll tell people, yeah, we do have in this room in particular, and they will sometimes charge more either for that room or at Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
It really gets crazy, and they'll charge more that's their season, is the Halloween season.
So when you I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and the other thing we've discovered just as far as haunted places being popular now is we found out that the Omni hotel chain, they actually look for haunted places to purchase.
Really?
Like whole hotels, yeah. Because we just started noticing that it was like this Omni was haunted in this city, and this Omni hotel was haunted in this city. And so I think Diane had looked it up online, and then they actually have a list of our haunted properties.
Wow.
And so even as a big chain, they kind of promote that they have haunted hotels that you can stay at.
That's weird. That's wild. Ugh. It's like it's like the poltergeist. Like they're building their hotels on like Indian burial grounds or something.
Don't look into the light.
So do you guys stay at these haunted places when you travel?
As far as we know, we have not stayed in a haunted location yet.
Is that by design? You don't want to tempt the spirits?
I think that is part of it, because to be perfectly honest, I don't know that we want to see a full-bodied apparition. I mean, you think in the back of your mind that's the holy grail, and boy, I would totally be, I mean, how can you be a skeptic anymore when you actually see this full-bodied apparition?
Yeah.
But on the other side, I'm only so brave.
Right.
And I just don't know, especially you never know what energy is that. Is that good energy? Is it bad energy? Is it going to try to hurt me? So I really would not. I would rather not have something pulling my sheets off in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Well, it's cool.
And the funny thing that when we first started doing ghost tours, because I get pretty creeped out pretty easily. Like Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, that's pretty good for me. You know, I don't need to go to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal or anything. And scary movies, like I'll jump 10 feet, I'll scare Diane, and I'm like, well, isn't that the point? She's like, oh, why do you do that to me? So I'm not good with all the scare stuff. But when we first started doing haunted tours, I'd love to take pictures.
Yeah.
And that's where you capture a lot of things. A lot of the times is where they'll see things. So Diane, they would say like the drawbridge at the old fort in St. Augustine is haunted. So she'd send me over to take pictures. All of a sudden it hit me, the realization that I'm sitting there taking the pictures away from the entire group by myself. I'm like, what am I going to do if like all of a sudden something materializes or touches me? I'm probably going to drop my camera and run straight into the ocean. So she used to send me out to kind of tempt the spirits, so to speak. And I'm like, what? Am I like the sacrificial lamb?
My one of my favorite stories is you guys were on a tour somewhere and the guy's telling the story about it's haunted by like a little girl who likes to hold your hand and Diane starts reaching out and you start putting your hands in your pockets because you don't want to.
That is our personality. So I'm the one who's like, okay, I'll put my hand out and see if something touches me. Of course, I'd probably run too if it did. And Denise is like, don't touch me, don't touch me.
I practically turned myself inside out trying to get into as small of a ball as I can.
And little kids adore Denise. So she's like, oh my God, if there's a little kid somewhere, they're just going to want to come up to me. I know it.
So have you guys ever been to Pittsburgh to check it out?
Not yet.
No?
We have not, but we have done a location in your city. We did the federal courthouse, I believe.
Oh yeah. At Pittsburgh's actually, we got a lot of weird shit over here. We have in the borough of McKees Rocks, which is on the Ohio. The Adena people had like the biggest burial mound in Pennsylvania, or right there. Like you could see where it was at from my house. They dug like 33. Carnegie dug like 33 skeletons out of there in the late 1800s.
Oh, wow.
Well, that will definitely cause some issues because a lot of the places in that area down here in the South, we've had a lot with the Adena people that you just mentioned and with the building of those mounds. And so many, especially in the 1800s, of these men would just go in there and start digging them up and taking the artifacts out, taking the bodies out. And it's like, do you guys know what you're doing?
Yeah,
kind of like poltergeist.
Yeah, they age it to like 2,300 years old. It's 2,300 years old, and the skeletons and the artifacts they dug like a bunch of copper stuff and like pottery and stone stuff out of there, and they all put it in Carnegie's museum. It's still there. And like they're trying to like, there's always like a group trying to repatriate them and put them back in the mounds and stuff. But you know, it's never. I mean, I don't think it's ever going to happen. They don't even display them anymore. They just have them in storage someplace in Oakland.
Yeah, once you've got them out of the ground and in a museum, it's almost impossible to try to put something back. And I don't know if it would really make much of a difference now. You've already taken it out and moved it around.
Yeah,
so.
And then like the second you put them back in there, you know, there's going to be some hooligans that are trying to dig them back out.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they probably are safer in the museum anyway.
And then also right in I live in Bellevue, which is like 10 minutes away from downtown, but we have the Andrew Bain Memorial Library. There's a guy. Are you guys familiar with Jeff Bellinger? He wrote a book called The World's Most Haunted Places. This library is in this. He mentions this library in this book, And it was the Allegheny County sheriff used to own the building, like back in the, I guess, 1800s, and he willed it to his daughters, and his daughters never married or had kids, so they donated it to the borough. And the notable thing about this place is it had an elm tree. It had an elm tree. The crown on this thing was like 320 feet, and it was like 111 or 110 feet tall. And it got Dutch elm's disease. They said it was the tallest building, or the tallest one of these trees on this side of the Mississippi River. Like, it was just gigantic. And it got Dutch elm's disease, and it started dying. And as it started dying, more and more ghostly stuff would happen inside this, inside the library. They said that there's one of the daughters' apparitions were in there, and she likes to fiddle with the lights and the ceiling fans and this kind of stuff. And in 1998, they wound up taking the tree out because of the Dutch elm disease. It degraded to a part where like a 3-ton piece of this tree like fell off of it, and they just had to get rid of it and take it out of there. The tree actually had a name. It was called Old Sentinel, and they said it was like 400 years old. They estimated it was like 400 years old when it finally died. And now that the tree is gone and ripped out of there, like, these apparitions happen all the time. I actually called up to the library and was like, hey, I want to bring my recorder and like poke around. And I guess so many people asked to do it. They're like, yeah, you could do that. It's like $30 an hour.
Oh my gosh. They made a business out of it.
Yeah. They're like, you can't just stay here by yourself. Like, we got to staff it for when you're poking around or whatever. So, but I thought it was a super interesting story, and especially like with the element of the tree being involved. It was like, like maybe it was holding something down, or, that's what my comic book brain, that's the way it works, is it's holding down like some kind of power. Once they get it out of there, it goes, it's like, pedal to the metal with this paranormal activity that's in this library.
That is fascinating. I have never heard anything like that. That would be interesting to look into. Why? Because the tree is starting to die, you're getting more ghostly activity. It does make you think it was kind of holding something back. Yeah.
And I mean, just because, it's also because the tree was so massive. Like, I can't even imagine a tree that size, besides like a redwood in California or something like that. But just like just like one of these elm trees like that big, it just seems like it's hard for me to wrap my head around it, kind of.
Well, the other thing I would wonder is a lot of these trees that have been around for a long time, especially when they're bigger, they might have been a hanging tree as well.
Oh, and it was on the sheriff's property.
Okay, I wonder if a few people got hung from it then.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, yeah. Yeah, that's
yeah.
That's wild.
We had a really old one here, too. It was, instead of being called the Old Sentinel, it was called the Old Senator. And then some lady was doing drugs and set it on fire.
Oh, there's a documentary about that.
Okay. Yeah, because it was just like, these trees survive for centuries, and then some idiot burns them down. It's like,
yeah,
God.
I saw like a documentary or a TV show about it, and like there's some kind of tree doctor or something that was like trying to save it or something at one point in time. It's crazy.
Yeah, because it didn't burn all the way to the ground, and so they were trying to figure out if there was something they could do for it.
Yeah, they were trying to like husband it or something, like graft other trees to it, or I don't know. I can't remember. It was such a long time ago. So do you guys like? I know there's like different kinds of hauntings. Like there's like the actual a dead person still hanging around, versus like an event or a person kind of getting like imprinted, like in space time in an area. Like, what are you guys' thoughts about about that? I'm probably not even using the right terminology.
Well, I think what you're talking about is a difference between a residual haunting and an intelligent haunting. So your residual haunting is going to be what you were just describing there, with something being imprinted. We don't know why that happens. A lot of people have been doing a lot of scientific research into it. There's a stone tape theory that thinks that because of the properties of certain stones, like limestone that has quartz and other material in it, that it absorbs energy, and then somehow it projects it back, almost like a
tape recorder or something.
Yeah, movie projector or a videotape. I mean, you talk to kids today about a stone tape theory, and they'd be like, "What's a tape?"
You got to call it a stone Blu-ray or something.
Yeah,
it's in the cloud.
The stone Blu-rays. Yeah,
it's a stone DVR.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's something that would replay itself. So like Gettysburg, the Battle of Gettysburg, that's a great example. A lot of people will see the battle still taking place on that field where the armies are still coming at each other and still firing and everything. That's kind of a residual. It's not intelligent because it doesn't interact with you. You can't talk to it. It won't talk to you. It doesn't even know that you're there. Now, the intelligent one is when you hear people that actually interact with something. That's when you're using the recorder and trying to get electric voice imprints on that tape. That would be something intelligent. If it pushes you, that's intelligent. If it looks at you and seems to recognize you. Now, when it comes to something intelligent, I don't know exactly what that is. Is that a dead person's spirit that's come back?
Right.
I sometimes wonder if it's not some kind of a time loop that we're seeing, like that person that's looks like they're dressed for the Victorian era is actually in the Victorian era, but somehow we've had a slip in time here.
That's wild.
Yeah. And for all we know, they're seeing us as ghosts too and thinking, oh my gosh, who's that person in the shorts and the T-shirt?
They're like, why is this person dressed like this?
What is that?
It's like a homeless person standing here in this library.
Yeah, so I wonder if that's not something that might be going on there. It's just some kind of a time slip. I don't know. That's why I tell people I'm open-minded and skeptical about it. Is it a ghost? I would never say that something for sure, without a doubt, is a ghost because I don't know.
Yeah, and there's even some thoughts that things like that could be possibly angels, demons, aliens, and so there's a lot of different ways that people go with what it is, and nobody's really answered that question yet.
Yeah, now, I've heard you on your podcast, History Goes Bump, I've heard you talk about shadow figures. Is that different than what you're, like the full body apparition that you're talking about? Is that a different kind of phenomenon?
I think it is. When I'm talking about a full-bodied apparition, I'm seeing something that either can be almost like it's a real person there standing to you. Some people think that they're actually talking to a real person and then they disappear. Mm-hmm. Or it's something that might be transparent, but it still looks like a human being. It's just you can see through them. Whereas to me, a shadow person, that does seem like it's a totally different phenomenon. Usually when you hear people describing it, it's not a positive experience. I don't know if Dan's ever told you his story, but he had an interaction with what I think is a shadow person.
I don't recall
and it was
that.
Not positive.
No, he told me about the time he was taking peyote in the desert and found a spirit animal. But I don't recall the shadow person phenomenon. I'll have to ask him about it.
Ask him when he was a kid. He saw one.
Yeah, and sometimes with the shadow people, the way people describe them is the shadow people are darker than dark. So it's like it's dark, but they're even darker than that. So it's like this almost like completely dark void that's just there.
It's like a black hole sucking all the energy out of everything.
So if
almost like a dementor.
So if you were standing in a totally dark room, you could still see it because it's darker than the room, like it's darker than the absence of light in the room.
Yes,
that's crazy.
That's the way we've heard it described. I hope I never see anything.
Yeah,
like that.
I've never seen one, and I don't want to. But that's the way people describe it: is it's darker than the darkness. It's like just this like dark negative kind of thing from the people we've heard talk about him.
Yeah. Oh, that's weird. The you were talking about how like it could be like an angel or a demon or whatever, and I know that you got to listen to Rosemary Ellen Guiley speak, and that's kind of like her thing, right? Is like everything is a demon.
Yeah. So kind of. Sometimes people of the religious influence, everything paranormal is a demon. And I don't believe that. Just because my mom was with my cousin when my cousin was dying in the room. And right before she passed, my cousin told her, it's okay, Mama's here now. And the cancer doctor said that don't think she was hallucinating because he saw those stories all the time. So in a case like that, like where they say everything's a demon, I don't think that whatever that was necessarily a demon. I don't know if it was her mom that really got to come back to kind of take her over to the other side.
Yeah.
Or if maybe it was an angel that was disguised as something more familiar so that it didn't freak her out and stuff. But so I'm not along the lines that everything is ta-da, whatever. But sort of like hearing that everything's a jinn or everything's a demon. I think that that's kind of simplifying it too much.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Rosemary's work because, well, 2 years ago, a year of my life turned into writing a book about a genie. So,
Oh yeah, sure.
yeah,
Sure.
so in the in prepping and researching and stuff for the book, I found that, and that's the one. Like, she's got a lot of great information. I hate that everything is a Bigfoot's a demon, and ghosts are demons, and this microphone stand is a demon, and it kind of I kind of get turned off at like by her stuff because of that. But like I said, there's a lot of good information still in there, I guess.
Exactly. It was fun because when we went to her talk at the Haunted America conference, she was talking about how they're right on the other side the jinn are right on the other side trying to like break through. And one of our listeners was on the totally different side of the room, and I looked at her and I mouthed, "Don't tempt the spirits," and she just started laughing. I'm like, "See, that's why you don't tempt them. They're right on the other side." Just 1 second, we have a barking puppy.
Uh-oh.
Well, and my thing with Rosemary Ellen Guiley's interpretation there, for me, jinn are a whole nother entity. Like when we're talking about shadow people and spirits of dead people, I think the jinn are something else too. I think a lot of the time they come from a darker side of energy, but I guess when we were listening to her give her talk, and I've heard her interviewed on a lot of other shows too, and it's the same thing there. It's just, like you said, I thought, okay, well, first of all, I have problems when people say that everything is something, just looking at ghosts.
Right.
But like you said, it's the aliens are the jinn, and then it was Bigfoot was the jinn. And I was like, are you kidding me? How can all of these things? So it's like she said, I finally figured out what the core thing is. It's these jinn, and that's it. To me, it was...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, I think it's kind of sexy nowadays to throw that word around because it's something that's not from a Western origin. You know what I mean? Like, everybody has like a preconceived kind of notion of like what a gargoyle is, or like what a demon is, or what a ghost is. But besides, like, I Dream a Genie, like, it's not really out there in the Zeitgeist, at least in the Western world. So I think bringing something from like ancient Arab, or even a little bit sooner, like Islamic mythology, is it's like a little bit more sexy and dangerous, I think. So I think that she falls prey into kind of latching on to that, I guess. I mean, I'm not a professional critic, especially of hers or whatever. I just like, you just see it being thrown around like they're doing movies now with jinns and stuff. So that's kind of like where. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we had to laugh because you said like everything is a jinn, including your microphone stand. So the rest of the conference, being the irreverent people we kind of are, no matter what happened within our group, we'd be like, "Oh, that was the jinn." Like if you tripped and fell, it was like, that was the jinn. It's the jinn's fault. And so we were having kind of fun with it, blaming everything that went askew on the jinn.
Well, it's kind of like whatever happens to be the in thing or the sexy thing. I mean, a few months ago, Slender Man all of a sudden was the big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, like excuse me, like a thought pattern that like presses itself into our reality just because a lot of people are thinking about it or something. Yeah, I mean, that is crazy. And then, like, well, of course, that kind of went over, like, pushed the envelope because the murders that were done for Slender Man or whatever. I seem to remember there were 2 little girls that got in trouble for at least trying to murder somebody because of Slender Man. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, I mean, this is Slender Man's just a story that got started on Creepypasta. It was like everybody was trying to outdo each other with creating some kind of mythos. So It was just somebody who'd created this mythos, and these kids latched onto it. And yeah, they stabbed a young girl, I don't know, something like 20 times.
Jesus.
Thankfully, she didn't die, but yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, it's kind of the vampire craze that went on. And remember those kids in Florida and stuff? So, I mean, people get a hold of something and they twist it, and there you go.
And by the way, vampires are jinn too.
And they're not sparkly, according to Diane.
Yeah, well, I'm with Diane on that one. We don't have time for any sparkly vampires. So did you guys, how, like, it's obvious that you're super knowledgeable in this. Like, is this just experience, or is there like a correspondence course, or like like how
Ghost Histories 101?
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
It's a lot of research, basically.
I gotcha.
as I said, I used to watch a lot of things when I was a kid, and so it's just reading a lot of material. I listen to a ton of podcasts as well. And obviously, it's something that interests you because you went ahead and launched this podcast that you started.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been basically researching like magic and the occult and like the Kabbalah and, you know, general conspiracy theories for 20 years while I'm doing these books, you know. So I'm like, well, I can hold my own with talking about this stuff, you know, to most people. So I just thought that I would put all this this questionable knowledge into practice and just kind of launch this new podcast to see what happens. But another thing that's super interesting is history. And besides all the creepy stuff, you guys also do a ton of history research for these places that you talk about. So where do you get the ideas to do like the Battle of Somme or whatever location that you're talking about in any given week? Like your listeners, I guess, probably give you guys some hints or whatever.
Yeah, so it would definitely be our listeners, or even just talking. Like I have another location because I happened to be talking to somebody at World Taekwondo Camp and found out she worked at a haunted restaurant in Australia. So I added that to the list, but our listeners give us a lot of our locations. And then Diane is amazing. I tried to do research, and I end up with all this information that makes absolutely no sense, except for maybe in the confines of my own head. And she has an uncanny way of being able to take all this information from the origins of the land all the way to the hauntings and get it done precisely and concisely in an interesting, fun way in a half an hour. It's just amazing.
Well, sometimes... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you don't know the history of something, it doesn't do you any good to look at the hauntings because they don't make sense. Your hauntings aren't going to make sense without the history to go with it. And it's the history that kind of helps to back up the hauntings.
Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh's been around for such a long time. Like when you start looking at the history of anything in this town, it doesn't take very long at all to find like a pile of dead bodies, you know? We have a park right on the peninsula there between the Allegheny, the Mon, and the Ohio called Point State Park. And when you look into it, there used to be a fort there back before, back in the colonial times. And there was a French and Indian War. And, if you read into it, you'll find, like, there's a pile of dead bodies underneath that park, and there's no record of them ever getting exhumed and laid to rest. There's just, like, 200 French soldiers just buried under there. And I went and seen the Violent Femmes there for $5, one time out in that park at a rib fest or something. So it's just, like, it's just wild, when you start looking at, like, the deep history of these places.
Yeah, because in order for a haunting to happen, in my opinion, something major had to happen. Because why would that energy choose to stay in that location? Because personally, if let's say you get to the other side, and what do they ask you on a questionnaire? Where would you like to hang out? Do you want to go to heaven? Do you want to go over here? Do you want to just walk around this house for the next 200 years?
Yeah.
So I'm like, something has to have happened that's locked that energy there for a reason. And generally, it's a tragic death, either a suicide, a murder, or a lot of these battlefields are just horribly haunted for that reason. And because there are so many people that die, or we were talking about the yellow fever deaths in St. Augustine, they just built mass graves because, especially back then, you couldn't take care of those bodies and make sure you didn't have all the sickness and disease that goes with bodies that are starting to decay, and so you'd have to throw them into these mass graves. And I don't know what the kicker is about not burying something properly, but it seems to lead to hauntings if people don't feel like they had a proper burial.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say that because I know in that Battle of Somme episode you guys were talking about the mass graves for the German soldiers. Mm-hmm. How they would just, it's way more efficient, I guess, to dig one big hole than a bunch of little tiny ones.
And if they're the enemy, you don't care.
Yeah, it's like you just got to get them in the ground before they start stinking.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I can imagine, we haven't been over there yet, but I can imagine that you're going to have a lot of stuff at sites of the concentration camps for the same thing as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, I can only imagine. Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, we've had requests for us to do a concentration camp, but we've kind of backburnered that because I'm like, oh, that would just be so hard. So I'm not ready to do that
You
yet.
got to have a good stomach to do that, I guess.
Yeah.
So, how long does it take you to do the research for any given show? Because I know your shows are like in segments. So basically, you have I think like 3 or 4 different kind of topics, like what happened in history today, and then like your creepy tidbit, and then like your big topic. Right? Is that pretty much the way it's laid out for your shows?
Yeah, I thought it would be fun to have a couple of segments to add on to the main content. So the main content is we'll choose a location, we'll do the history, and then the hauntings. Usually the history is about 20 minutes, hauntings about 10 to 15. We start off the show with a moment and oddity because I love odd stuff. So we have and that's just usually a little 2-minute thing. And then we have this day in history. So it's something that happened on that particular day. And that's usually a 2-minute little blip as well. The nice thing is, as we have grown our listenership, a lot of people say, hey, we really love doing history and we'd like to help you guys out.
Put them to work.
So, exactly. So we put some people to work in a lot of the moments in oddity and this day in history. We have like a research crew that helps out with that, so I don't have to do that as often. And then they help with some of the main research as well. Of course, I have to go through it, make sure, vet it, make sure it's true and everything. And really it depends upon the location or the event, or we even do people, how much information is out there or how much wrong information is out there, because Wikipedia does have a lot of great information on it, but there's some things that they do get wrong.
Yeah, whenever you look at Wikipedia, you should have a gigantic thing of salt.
Exactly. And so if I see something on Wikipedia and then I look somewhere else and it says something different, I generally go to that other thing that's different, and I'll try to vet it by, usually I'll have to go to census records or something. How many children did this person have, or what age were they? When did they die? Were they born? So you have to search through some of that. So it depends upon how hard it is to get the information. Some places are really easy because they're well known. You'll throw out, you mentioned the Allegheny River. Well, every time I hear that name, I think of the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum because, that name's right in it.
Yeah.
And that's a place that would be easy to research because there's a ton of information out there on it. There's other places where somebody says, you just mentioned this Andrew Brain Memorial Library. I wrote it down.
Yeah.
And you've got to believe we will do it, John, and you will be credited with suggesting it.
Oh, thanks.
And, I don't know how much information's out there. There might be a lot, or I might have to do a lot of digging. So usually what I'll say, especially with a podcast, talking about recording and editing and loading it up and all that fun stuff behind the scenes, there's at least, I'd say, 25 to 30 hours put into each of these shows.
Okay, so you're not just researching it the week of and just jumping on the microphone. This is something that you guys got to plan. Your you must have your schedule's walked out pretty far, I'd imagine.
Right now we are out into November, and
That's so
I have
awesome.
a huge list. We have enough shows just from suggestions that people have given us probably for the next 2 years, but I've scheduled it out knowing what dates I want to put stuff up through to November.
Cool. Hey, when you do the Bain Library, let me know, and I'll go up there and I'll get some pictures for you guys.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, literally, it's 3 blocks away from my house, so I could.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I know that Dan did that for me for the courthouse. He went out because it's nice to have your own pictures, not something that you're grabbing off the internet.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you guys so much for calling in or whatever, Skyping in. I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun talking to you guys, and I highly recommend. History Goes Bump. Like I said, I listen to it. I think it's. The fun part to me is listening to you guys interact, but I like the content too. So, so yeah, that's really cool. Do you guys have anything else that you want to plug? You wrote a podcasting book, right?
I did. I am going to have to update it and stuff because, as you probably already know as well, being a podcaster, it changes every month.
Yeah.
It's just what's been really great about podcasting is people have finally figured out what it is and that it's something that they should be paying attention to, whether it's people who want to advertise or it seems like every news person out there and celebrity is getting their own podcast now. So it's becoming a big thing, and there's a lot of places that want to have it now and want to put it out there to the masses. And it's even getting to the point now where people buy a new car and you can get it so that your podcasts come through the regular radio and stuff.
Yeah,
so.
It's crazy that you mentioned that, that people's finally figured out what it was, because when the Djinn Jihad book released, I got invited to go on like a little TV show here in town to talk about it. It's like a little panel show or whatever. So I'm like talking to them, and the lady's like, "Oh, you do a podcast too?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do a podcast." And they were like, "What's a podcast?" And like, I literally had to waste all my time explaining what a fucking podcast was instead of getting to talk about my book. It was a very frustrating day for me.
I bet.
I was like,
You're
"No, but there's this
I'm here to
comic book."
sell my book,
Yeah,
really.
Well, it's funny because I'm not a techie at all. Like all the tweeting and everything that goes on, I have no idea. And so I just assumed that podcasting was something that everybody knew about but me. So I was telling people, "Oh, yeah, this podcast." I had no idea that they had not a clue. And finally, Diane was like, "They probably don't even know what you're talking about." So I'd be like, "Yeah, we're doing a podcast." And I just thought it was something like Twitter that everybody knew about because I don't know that much about technology. So I just figured I was the one in the dark. And I found out I actually am cutting edge for once.
So is it not available anymore, or like until you do updates, or what?
It is available, but I was going to pull it down and update it and stuff.
Oh, okay, well then never mind. Forget all this podcast talk. Thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate it. And the website is historygoesbump.com, right?
That is it. Thank you so much, John, for having us on. We really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you, John.
Yeah, and you guys are available on iTunes and Stitcher and probably
Pretty
everywhere
much
else.
Everywhere, and soon we'll be up on iHeartRadio, and yeah.
Awesome. You guys aren't hard to find. You got a pretty big following, and you got a lot of great Patreon fulfillment tiers and stuff. So I recommend you guys check all that stuff out and subscribe to History Goes Bump.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Vienna, 1683. Today is September 11th, 1683. The mighty army of the Ottoman Empire, led by the savage and radical terror troops of the Dar al-Harb, surround the walled city of Vienna and begin a siege to break the golden apple of Europe and kill, enslave, or convert all of its inhabitants. The valiant citizens stand against the tyrannical army with the steadfast leadership of Count Ernst Rudiger von Stromberg, the help of the ever-living rebel Cyrus the Dead Guy, and the hopes of the faraway King Jan Sobieski III and his army of flying hussars. The Vienna 1683 comic is available right now from Stigmata Studios at stigmatastudios.com and on indieplanet.us. The Non-Standard Squad, 1944. World War II. 3 weird American soldiers are on a search and rescue mission into the oldest and darkest regions of Europe. A cursed, ever-living warrior, Cyrus the Dead Guy. An experimental warbot, Sergeant Lane McCord. An all-red axe, mysterious rogue with a demon-possessed arm, come face-to-face with an army of magically corrupted machine-obsessed elves, a magic hammer-wielding Norse Ubermensch, and a Nazi wizard who is a member of the ancient Dark Order of the Shining Hexagon. The Non-Standard Squad 1944 comic is available right now from Stigmata Studios at stigmatastudios.com and on indieplanet.us.